this next video, I want to start walking through using that Tkinter package in order to make a really fun interactive Numbrix puzzle. And I'd like to start with showing you what the output looks like. So everything we need in order to do this Tkinter interface is in this cell right here, and I'm going to evaluate it. And look what happens when I evaluate that cell. A new window, kind of looks like Minesweeper, pops up for me out here. And you can see the values in the Numbrix puzzle that are beginning in the window. And then there's a whole bunch of blank cells that I can write in, some of which are highlighted. What I've done is written some code to highlight a cell when it's entirely surrounded, because surrounded cells are a good way to start your puzzle. Their values are forced, and so it's a good way to start making progress on your puzzle. And the puzzle really and truly is interactive. If I come up here and put an 8 in here, the only way to go from the 7 to the 9 through this surrounded cell is with the number 8. I type in 8 and hit enter, and the formatting goes away. And just like we saw in Excel, if I come over here and I put a number 5 here and surround these cells, they become highlighted, updating their status to let me know that those cells deserve my attention. And I can close this window out. And we're going to take a couple of videos to just walk through the code. When I present this to you, all of this code that I'm going to walk through is going to remain in the document. You're not going to have to mess with this at all, because learning to use the Tkinter package is a much more complicated skill, especially if you're new to Python. But what I am going to do is remove some of the definitions of the functions that call outside of this cell that need to be completed in order for this to run properly, and I'll have you focus on filling those in. So the cell is rather long, and like much of computer science, we don't actually want to read it top to bottom. I want to start reading it right here at around line 32, which is mostly the built-in Tkinter interface, and I want to talk about some of those codes. So the very first thing I do on line 32 is I create a window object. So I'm calling this tk is a function. So as we were seeing before, we had our own class that we built called a cell, and if we wanted to create a cell object, we called cell with the open parentheses. So that Tkinter package has a tk object that we can create, and so we create it blankly with this empty set of parentheses, and we've named that object window. And what that really is going to be is the window that pops up for us when we want to reference things that we want to put in the window. We need a name for it. And one of the attributes of that class is that the window should have a title, and the title is what's displayed when it opens up. And since we're making a Numbrix puzzle or a Numbrix application, that's what we want the title to be, is Numbrix. So that's everything that we have here. That's using and creating our first object, and these objects are called widgets in the Tkinter package. That's our first widget that we've created. The next thing we're going to do, our Numbrix puzzles are 9 by 9 grids, so we're going to have 2 for loops here. One initial for loop that runs through the rows of the Numbrix puzzle, so starting at row 0 and then row 1 and then row 2, and each time we're at a row, we need 9 columns. So this puzzle is going to go 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. So we're going to start in row 0 and fill that all up with those spots 0 through 8 in the columns, and then we'll move on to the next row. So at each entry in our Numbrix grid, we're going to create another widget object, which is called a frame. And that's going to be the button that we put into the Numbrix puzzle. So we named it frame with a lowercase f, and we make a call to that constructor of the frame object. And that frame object lives in the Tkinter library. But this time, instead of using what's called the default constructor, where we pass these empty parentheses, we want to pass everything that the frame might want to know to it right away. So the first thing that a frame object has is a master. So we created this window, and that window is going to hold everything. And so in order for us to know how the window and the frame object interact, we're going to say that the frame object that we're creating at that entry in the grid belongs to the frame. So that's what we're putting right here. I'm creating a frame object and I want it to belong to this other thing that I created called window, so that it is within that window I've created. This second line is not particularly important. It's just a statement of how I want that object to look. And there are a couple different options there. And then I also have this border width option. So as we'll see in a moment, I'm going to create the ability to enter things within the frame. And this border is just putting like a little padding in between the entries that I have. So none of those is particularly important. The only thing that's really important in this constructor is where do I want this frame to belong? And I want it to belong to the object that I created previously called a window. And then this line of code that we're going to walk through right here, last thing in this video, is saying now all I've done in this line right here, lines 37 through 41, I've created the frame object. And I've stated that I want it to belong to the window, but then I need a line of code to actually place it there so that it is visible. I've created the object, I want it to belong to the window. This line right here, frame.grid, where I'm passing it row I, column J, is telling us now that I've created the object, go and draw it in the window. So this line right here is actually adding the object to the window and telling the window object where to place it when it's displayed to us. So frame.grid of row I, column J does the process of actually adding it to the window, and it doubles up with saying, where do I want to put it? So that's lines 32 through 42. In our next video, we'll cover what remains here before moving back to the top of this cell.